How did the world's oldest known law code influence the development of ancient societies? How strict were its rules, and how were they organized? Keep watching to find out Hammurabi's mysteries revealed. Mesopotamia means between two rivers. It lies between the Tigris and the Euphrates, and it is the first human civilization recorded in history. As early as 4000 BC, the settlement of Uruk emerged as the first city in history. Its people developed writing, maths, and astronomy. Within the next 2 millennia, Mesopotamia became a melting pot of city-states and a milestone for the ancient world civilizations. These impressive ancient cities grew rapidly in population and wealth, which led to the emergence of a societal hierarchy. There were rules, courtiers and priests at the top, followed by artisans and merchants, and servants and laborers at the bottom. For the first time in history, a group of people was split into different tasks and specializations. In 1792 BC, a powerful Amorite Westerner king appeared in the city of Sippar in southern Mesopotamia. Hammurabi. He was the oldest son of Sin-Muballit, and he became the 6th king of Babylon after his father's abdication due to illness. Hammurabi created laws that would unite his state and develop it into the first Babylonian Empire.
Despite Hammurabi's success as a conqueror and king, he is best remembered not for his accomplishments on the battlefield, but for being a great reformer and legislator.
Hammurabi created laws on contracts, liabilities, family, including divorce and custody, crime, and the responsibilities of public officials. Historian Paul A. Ray explains that the 282 laws from Hammurabi's code give us a better picture of life in Babylon than life in ancient Athens, which is much more recent. In 901, a 2.3-meter tall diorite stele was discovered at Susa, Iran. This contains 4,000 lines of text organized into 282 laws. It is written in cuneiform script and the Akkadian language. Cuneiform writing is the first type of writing recorded in history. It appeared in the Mesopotamian cities as a way to record, not the great deeds of great leaders, like it was once thought, but transactions and trades. Above the laws on the stele stands a carved portrait of King Hammurabi, receiving the laws as a measuring rod and tape from Shamash, the Babylonian sun god and god of justice. The law code is written very clearly, and all sentences follow an if-then structure. This way, judges couldn't interpret the laws to follow their own interests or prejudices. That meant that the laws were fair, and corruption or bias were discouraged. The prologue, which introduced Hammurabi's code, stated the king's intention to be fair towards all. When Shamash sent me to rule over men, I brought about the well-being of the oppressed, to bring about the rule of righteousness in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evildoers, so that the strong should not harm the weak, so that I should rule and enlighten the land to further the well-being of mankind. However, the laws were even harsher towards the lower classes of Babylon. The punishments would vary depending on the social classes of both accuser and... For example, here's a law that protects pregnant women. If a man has struck a free woman with child and has caused her to miscarry, he shall pay 10 shekels for her miscarriage. If that woman dies, his daughter shall be... If it be the daughter of a plebeian that has miscarried through his blows, he shall pay 5 shekels of silver. If that woman dies, he shall pay half a mina of silver. Plebeian women were less protected than rich ones, and laborers were hardly even protected from injury. However, doctors' fees were adjusted to the socioeconomic class of the patient, but the penalties for malpractice were also dependent on this. A doctor who caused the death of a rich patient would have his hands cut off, while only financial restitution was required if the casualty was a laborer. The laws were strict, the punishments were often harsh, and even though the code was displayed publicly, not everyone could read it. This led to numerous cases of misunderstandings and unjust punishment.
Despite the Code of Hammurabi being one of the most well-written and advanced legal codes of antiquity, as alluded to, today it would be considered ridiculously harsh, inhumane, even irrational in many cases.
However, the need to understand and respect these laws also led to a cultural boom and increase in literacy throughout Babylon. Since the discovery of the law code in 1901, more ancient Mesopotamian law codes have been discovered. Although following a similar structure with a prologue, epilogue, and the one crime, one punishment principle, they don't match Hammurabi's code in complexity. For example, the law code section on family features a law on divorce. If a woman is unhappy in her marriage, she can file for divorce. But who gets the property? The cases differ depending on whether the couple has children or not, and on the evidence that the woman brings against her husband. Hammurabi also introduced the first example of the lex talionis doctrine, the famous an eye for an eye. Indeed, there is such a law in Hammurabi's code. If a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. If one breaks a man's bone, they shall break his bone. Laws such as these ensured that the punishment wasn't bigger than the crime, even though by modern standards the punishments were often very severe. More so, the laws prevented people from taking their own revenge and fueling a never-ending chain of conflicts. This wasn't the only legal breakthrough for Hammurabi's code brought to Mesopotamia. The code also introduced the concept of innocent until proven guilty. If anyone points the finger at a sister of a god or the wife of anyone, and cannot prove it, this man shall be taken before the judges, and his brow shall be marked. If a man has borne false witness in a trial, or has not established the statement that he has made, if that case be a capital trial, that man shall be put to death. That's right, accusers needed evidence to support their claim. Hammurabi created a law code that was, in ancient times, unprecedented in fairness. King Hammurabi also had a sharp military mind, expanding his territory from one small city to the whole area between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. First, he freed Babylon from Elamite dominance and drove the Elamites from all southern Mesopotamia. Then he proceeded to conquer the cities of Isin, Eridu, Kish, Uruk. The list goes on. This was the first time that southern Mesopotamia was called Babylonia. After conquering the western cities, Hammurabi now controlled the Euphrates River, a crucial move in a land that depended on irrigation and agriculture. Hammurabi then spent over a decade on fortifying his newly conquered cities and on implementing his bureaucracy and taxation laws all around Babylonia. After 1768 BC, Hammurabi turned east, conquering modern-day Iran, which was a great metal-producing area. Westwards, Hammurabi's disciplined army conquered the Amorite kingdoms. Remember, he was an Amorite king himself. The kingdoms of Mari and Yamhad in modern Syria and Jordan were now part of Babylonia. In 1763 BC, the Babylonian king started an offensive against Rim-Sin, the king of Larsa, and a king whom he had met before in the southern Mesopotamian cities. Even though Rim-Sin was determined not to lose again to Hammurabi, he didn't expect Hammurabi's ingenious plan. Hammurabi's army dammed up the river of a main watercourse in Larsa, then released it, causing a devastating flood to the city. He took it easily, and within a few years rebuilt a canal to help resettle the population on the western Euphrates River. Hammurabi now had to enter a long-awaited conflict against the old Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians controlled the land from southeastern Anatolia to central Mesopotamia. Hammurabi struggled to gain power over the Assyrian kings Shamash-Adad and Ishmi-Dagan, but their successor, Mut-Ashkur, was easier to persuade. Mut-Ashkur started paying tribute to Babylon around 1751 BC. Hammurabi split his empire into regions where his trusted governors would keep him posted on local issues and inform him whether people were respecting his laws. There also was an independent authority which kept these governors and the elites in check. No one was above the law in Hammurabi's Babylon. Hammurabi's law code inspired numerous ancient law codes and writings, including, of course, the Old Testament. Remember the eye for an eye rule? Draco, considered the first democratic legislator, implemented laws similar to those in Babylonia in ancient Athens in 621 BC. These laws applied to everyone, although most of the punishments were much more severe even than those of Hammurabi. giving birth to the expression draconian law. The U.S. Supreme Court shows Hammurabi as one of the historic lawgivers on its southern wall. And Hammurabi's legacy doesn't stop at his law code. When the king conquered and expanded his new empire, he didn't follow the tradition of having himself deified during his lifetime. This decision set a precedent for the concept of kingship visible in ancient Greece. The Babylonian Empire didn't last long after Hammurabi's death, though. It had no natural defensive barriers and it was vulnerable to attack. By 1595 BC, southern Mesopotamia was ruled by the formerly nomadic Kassites. However, what Hammurabi left behind was much more than a short-lived, medium-sized empire. From judicial laws to cylinder seals used to control transactions, Hammurabi introduced Mesopotamia to societal advancements that would last millennia after his death. What do you think was Hammurabi's biggest contribution to law? And what laws are still applicable today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and while you're at it, check out our other videos and subscribe to our channel.